Some of you have known me throughout the stories that my dad, Jamie, will tell when working in the kitchen or standing in the back at the soundboard. Others of you know me through talking to my mom, Mary Beth, at choir practices or on the youth floor. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a senior at Chattahoochee High School and will be attending Valdosta State University in the fall. I have grown up in this church. I've created so many amazing memories here. My dad likes to constantly remind me of my earliest memorable experience here. I wasn't quite a year old when we began coming to church here, so during service, my parents wanted to leave me in the nursery. For weeks, my dad would try to drop me off, but I would cry inconsolably and if the thought of him leaving me. He ended up just sitting and holding me all throughout service and would never make it there. It finally came time for him to really leave me. Once he left, I cried like every other week, but he was determined to go to service. He went to service despite all of my screaming, and the nursery worker eventually could not handle it anymore. She ended up having to walk into the fellow sanctinasium and interrupting service to grab my parents so somebody could come and console me. After this incident, a member of this congregation donated the paging system you will now see when you go into the fellow sanctinasium that was used to contact parents of kids like me without having to interrupt the sermon that day. This story is just a part of the beginning of my history in this church. My story continued by participating in children's choir when I was 3 years old. With that came attending Wednesday night dinners. I've gone to Sunday school consistently throughout all stages of my life. I began my soccer career in the recreation program here. I went to vacation Bible school throughout elementary school and then volunteered there through middle school and high school. I was introduced to the amazing Camp Glisten here, where I attended for 9 summers. Lastly, throughout middle school and high school, I've had the pleasure of being part of our youth program here, which included Wednesday night small groups and Sunday night Catalyst, or our youth group. It's safe to say this church has been a major part of who I am today and shaping me into the woman that I am. That brings me to my verse this morning. I selected John chapter 15, verse 12, which says, "My commandment is this, love each other as I have loved you." Well, Jesus is pretty cut and dry with that one. He tells us to love one another, but he doesn't just tell us to love with any kind of love, an unconditional love. Jesus teaches us to love each other even when we don't agree with what they're doing or what they believe. And he wants us to love like he loved, which is unconditionally and never ending. Did you know almost every week this congregation verbally promises to love like this? We are constantly baptizing new members, and when we do this, we read a congregational pledge, which says, "With God's help, we will so order our lives after the example of Christ, surrounded by steadfast love." Let me start over. "With God's help, we will so order our lives after the example of Christ, that these children, surrounded by steadfast love, may be established in the faith and confirmed and strengthened in the way that leads to life eternal." This pledge was read to me 17 years ago in the fellow sanctinasium when I was just 15 months old. At just over a year old, not a lot of people in that room had any reason to love me, but they still promised they would. This pledge that we read promises that new members will constantly be loved and supported every day as they walk with Christ. 17 years later, this promise is still being kept to me by the members of this church. And many members of this church have been like a family to me, and some have been like mentors to me. One of these people was my first Sunday school teacher, Miss Candy Shelnut. And for those of you who may not know, she is the wife of our former senior pastor, Pastor D. Shelnut. When I was 5 years old, she taught me, and now 13 years later, we still maintain a strong relationship. Miss Candy kept her promise of loving me, but she did more than just love me. She was a major part of establishing my faith, because at such a young age, she was able to give me the basic understanding of the Bible. I probably would not be standing up here today had it not been for her. And although she's unable to be here this morning, I'd still like to thank her for helping me understand at such a young age where this idea of Christianity came from. But I also want to thank her for the friendship over the years and her constant loving on me. Another one of these people I met through the many years my dad has worked in the kitchen on Wednesday nights with the Kitchen Angels. When I was too young to be left alone at home, my dad would bring me to church with him on Wednesdays, and this is where I met Miss Sissy Staffel. I was in early elementary school when we met, and we began to talk regularly, just everyday small talk about what was going on in my life. We eventually found and bonded over our love for art. Our friendship began to expand outside of Wednesdays. I would begin going to her house, and she would help me with my art, and we would talk. Miss Sissy gave me something greater than anything I could have asked her for. She gave me her time. I can't describe what that meant to me. She helped shape me into who I am today. So, thank you, Miss Sissy, for loving me enough to help me grow into who I am today. Lastly, I want to address a group of people. These are all the leaders on the youth floor, past and present. I could go on for hours about multiple individuals, but I don't think any of us plan to be here all day. These are the individuals who have taken an unmentionable amount of time to come up and teach us on Wednesdays and Sundays, and they have also taken time out of their lives to sleep on the most uncomfortable beds and air mattresses on various youth trips and mission trips. Thank you for showing your love to myself and all of the youth by always being available when we needed an adult who wasn't necessarily our parent, by being sure to always check in on us, even when you don't have to, and by teaching so many important life lessons. This morning, I want to talk also about one of the life lessons that I learned on the youth floor. It stems from the use of the word that our gathering room is named after. If you've ever walked upstairs during youth time, you'll constantly hear the phrase, "meet in the agape room." So what does agape mean, and why is it significant today? Agape stems from the Greek language meaning unselfish love, or God's love for humankind. As a youth group, we meet in a room that is named after God's love for us. I share this today because it truly embodies the love that I have experienced through not just the individuals of the youth program, but all of the members of this church. This morning I've talked about a few individuals and how they have impacted me, and there's so many more that have impacted me just as much. We make a promise every day as a church to love everyone. Thank you for keeping your promise to me. This morning, I addressed how the promise was kept to me and is continuing to be kept, but has it been kept with everyone that comes through that door? And has it been kept with the ones that haven't come through the door yet? Love does not stop at the door when you leave. John 15:12, Jesus commands us to love everyone as he loved, unconditionally and never ending. I want to challenge you to show agape love this week. This morning, I want to close with something my sister Sarah once wrote that has stuck with me. I stopped looking for God to show me rainbows and found him in loved ones who surrounded me in my storms, and I felt inner peace for the first time in a long time. Sarah's quote reminds us that God's love is shown through other people. He's not going to come yelling down in a big booming voice to tell us that he loves us, and he's not going to post it on a billboard. He's going to show it through the people around us. We as Christians are called to be deliverers of God's love, an unselfish, unconditional, never-ending love. Just imagine how different the world we live in today would be if we all loved the way that Jesus calls us to. Thank you.